Hi everyone, I hope you all had a good holiday season. I know I did, but it's time to get back to our regularly scheduled program with our next album, Panchiko's Deathmetal. Deathmetal released to relative obscurity given the fact that only 30 CDs were ever pressed and they were given mostly to family and friends. The album was made by original band members Owain Davies, Andy Wright, Sean Faraday, and John, who was later replaced by John too, as well as with the addition of Rob. Now, this album contrasts the likes of Tool and Deftones because, well, if you couldn't guess already, Panchiko isn't really a known band. If anything, they're one of the most obscure bands of all time, which makes their comeback in the year 2020 all the more interesting, as a 4chan post was originally how people found out of the band's existence, and then it then spread through the internet, making its way to a Facebook forum before the band even knew people had heard of their music. It's an insane story on the surface. Well, I mean, it's insane in general, but it shows the level of dedication the fan base has, as well as the band, to come back decades later, re-releasing their music as well as a compilation of unreleased tracks, and going on a tour, which I had the absolute delight of seeing. The version of the album I'll be discussing in this video is the streaming re-release of the original Deathmetal album with the addition of the Kicking Cars EP. I don't have the vinyl, so I can't review that, and I don't have any old version of the album, so we're stuck with what I have. Another aside is that I will be referring to this album mostly as indie lo-fi alternative. You could call it a bunch of other things, but this is simply the broadest title I can give it without trying to claim that it's a purely electronic or purely emo album, despite the fact that it has both those elements. You could even say it's acoustic because of a couple of songs, but that's getting derivative and I don't like to do that, so it's a lo-fi indie alternative album. And with all that out of the way, let's get to the opening track, Deathmetal, which is one of the most iconic tracks in my opinion. The opening swirling effect, giving way to light strumming and floating vocals, is a great introduction to the lo-fi aesthetic of the album and really prepares you for what comes next. Not only this, but the contrast with Owain's rather dark lyrics, such as "They see her as a harpy, but she's on her meds," is a great introduction to the ideas and contrasting elements of the album that get explored throughout. This is only made better once you get to the chorus, which does the other thing that I love about this album, which is being kind of funny at times. The rhyming of death metal with facial is hilarious to me, and it's so funny that I'm not giving you the lyrics, so you have to listen to it. This paired with the "don't repeat it" at the end of the chorus is kind of interesting because it's something that doesn't really happen a lot on this album, but they do it on some of their demo tapes from Ferric Oxide. Another amazing aspect of this song is the outro, when the drums give way to this god tier synth before coming back to the swirling effect from the intro. It makes the song feel very cohesive despite the breakaway of the "don't" sample, and I just like it. It just works so well. Despite how much I just dick rode the first track, it's actually not my favorite. My favorite is Stabilizers for Big Boys, the next track. The shredding guitar and distant drums of the intro make for a perfect segue into the distant bass and clear vocals of the verse. And this is a contrast I like on a lot of the songs, where things will be completely flipped when it goes from intro to chorus or intro to verse. It's a cool little detail that I like that they've included in almost every song. While the chorus is nice and to the point, my favorite part of the track has to be verses 2 and 4, where the lo-fi production is dropped, instead being replaced by industrial production with banging drums right in your face, and Owain's vocals becoming distorted as he sings in this angry and vitriolic voice. This is also where we get my favorite verse of the album, specifically on verse 4, with the lines, "I want to break you like glass. I want to do it with class. I want to kiss like a girl. I want to fuck up your world. I want to live like he loves, but it is never enough. I want to stand, but I fall, because I'll be taking it all," with the "all" being shouted as it gives into the outro. It's a great song, and I specifically love that section of it because it sounds so complete and yet so different than the rest of the album, which is just cool to hear. And it's Still good, which is even better. It's a sharp contrast that maintains the same level of quality as every other track on the album, if not better in my opinion, because like I said, this is my favorite song. The rather somber ending of Stabilizers for Big Boys serves as a good intro to the song Laputa, which is a mostly somber track, a cool down from the previous, if you will. The opening dramatic keynotes, followed by acoustic strumming and slow drums, really emphasizes this point, which I like a lot because it allows for the song and album as a whole to kind of have these moments of highs and lows without necessarily dropping in consistency or quality. The trifecta of Elaine's crooning with the acoustic guitar and slow drums really exemplifies the kind of DIY aspect of this album, which is something that I personally really appreciate in this song, especially when you look at the meaning of this song, which is actually kind of interesting. It's based off a movie by Hayao Miyazaki, which I have not seen. Don't crucify me. I just don't have that kind of time to watch literally everything everyone bases their albums off of, or I would literally never talk about them because I'd be too busy watching material. The next track, The Eyes of Ibad, does something really interesting in my opinion, which is make a very shoegaze sounding song without the most shoegaze element of any shoegaze track, which is reverb heavy guitar. Instead, replacing it with distorted and muddy drums and pairing that with Owain's high refrain. It's a perfect contrast, one that I wasn't even expecting upon first listen, and yet it continues to work every time. The distorted lines of holding the phone because I know it's wrong, only to give way into the melancholy how high, is so perfect I can't even explain it with words. Not only all of this, but it's based off Dune, so like, new day, no makeup, next song, cut. This is my third contender for favorite track on the album because of one key detail: the synths. There is a singular synth throughout this entire song that's basically the song itself, with everything else being secondary. The high frequency isn't annoying, so it allows for the light strumming and drum work to work flawlessly, pairing with Owain's vocals in a way that the other tracks really don't, because his notes match the highs and lows of the synth. And then the drop after the chorus, when it allows this chaos of droning noise to swirl only to drop back into the synth line. It's a really cool usage of these tones and sounds, and honestly something you wouldn't see happen again until, like, I don't know, fucking Blade. But that's not all, because we still have the lyrics, specifically the final verse, which I think is the best on the song. It goes, "We watch the girl in the booth who gives her services for hundreds of yen. She wonders where all the happiness went," only to then be compounded by the refrain of "she's cut" as the outro goes. It's a perfect combination of the light aesthetic with the synths and drums and guitar, and the dark and gritty reality of the world in Elaine's lyrics. This contrast, like I said before, continues throughout the album, and I like how it's shown here because it's such a clear and definitive showcase while also maintaining the same level of quality that the rest of the tracks have. Sodium Chloride keeps this kind of contrast going with the upbeat acoustic guitars, claps, and jingling contrasting very well with Elaine's rather questionable lyrics. Lines like "don't let your tears build up for years because no one will notice you" make it sound like there's a piece of genuine advice trying to be given, but the person giving it is kind of just a dick, so they don't really know how to say it without saying something rude at the same time. I wonder who else does that. Kicking Cars is probably the most impactful and meaningful song on the album, at least in my opinion. The fuzzy electronics at the beginning giving way to droning static and layered guitars pairs perfectly with Elaine's vocals, and the lyrics are phenomenal as well. Lines such as "something in me makes me realize the things I dream are tearing up the structures seem" are so anti-capitalist it's almost like a motto. This is then proven to be anti-capitalist a few lines later on the chorus with the lines "run around in the consumer fog and your love is too for fun," making it feel like a condemnation, a revolt, if you will. This is then contrasted with lines such as "with yours, they're kept in the stars, family day trips to the moon and Mars," adding a hopeful and determined view, though it doesn't sound like the person saying these particular lines are for it, especially when paired with, "I don't know, fucking Blade." But that's not all, because we still have the lyrics, specifically the final verse, which I think is the best on the song. It goes, "we watch the girl in the booth who gives her services for hundreds of yen. She wonders where all the happiness went," only to then be compounded by the refrain of "she's cut" as the outro goes. It's a perfect contrast, one that I wasn't even expecting upon first listen, until like, I don't know, fucking Blade. Something in me makes you wanna die. Those aren't even the most iconic lyrics on the song. The most iconic is obviously the final line, "Who did forget the cigarettes?" with cigarettes being just shouted into fucking eternity. It's honestly probably the best moment on the album, though I still reserve the right to say Stabilizers for Big Boys is my favorite song. It's just a perfect end, and I think it works really well, especially with the prior lyrics and the album as a whole being a rather transformative concept. And this transformative concept is something I want to make a larger video on because it relates to the albums Anima and White Pony as well. This idea that in the late 90s to early 2000s there was this cultural shift where people felt like they needed to grow and expand past the certain societal boundaries around them. I think this is why Panchiko made a comeback in the 2020s, because the album still has so much relevance, not only in its anime references, but also in its actual material. They're very much saying that the way things work isn't working. And it's interesting to see how that can be not only maintained, but then brought back for a new generation to investigate and involve themselves with. And I hope that Panchiko comes with another new set of songs, because I really want to hear what they have to say after 20 years of life experience and a bunch of shit happening that definitely was not predicted then, like that, or that, or that again, or that. A lot of shit happened in Britain. I know shit about you guys. Weirdos. But with that, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you have a good new year, and I'll be doing another poll on my Instagram. If you want to go vote on the next album, it will be up for the day after this video comes out. Peace.